I want to tell you about the 3 weeks I spent asking a question that nobody answered. Station Korath is the kind of posting you get when you are new to the treaty corridor, and nobody has decided yet what to do with you. It sits in dead center deep space between the Khan sovereignty and the Veth Compact, a pressurized cylinder of 900 people who exist to prevent 2 old empires from going back to war. I had been seconded there as a civilian medical aide, one of 4, because the treaty required a minimum staffing ratio and someone had miscounted. My duties were basic. Vitals, supply logs, corridor checks. The infirmary annex on level 4 was my last stop every morning. I was briefed on the annex patient on my first day by a Khan court physician named Sorel Vaz. He had the air of someone explaining something he had explained too many times already. The patient was designated Queen Tesra Oval Khan. She held the Khan sovereignty's senior bloodline title, which was, under treaty protocol, suspended. Her status in station records was listed as non-responsive, administrative surplus non-succession category. She had been on Korath for 3 years. In that time she had not spoken. She had not left the annex. She ate enough to maintain baseline vitals and nothing more. The court had sent her here after the death of her heir. The file listed no name for the heir, only the cause, a transit accident, and the date, and in 3 years the court had filed 2 transfer requests to move her to a long care facility in the outer ring. Both had stalled on logistics. Sorel Vaz handed me a compliance checklist and told me to run it daily and log the numbers. He said it plainly, the way you say things you have accepted. She does not respond. Do not expect her to. I ran the checklist that first morning. The annex was a small room off the main corridor, pressurized and climate-regulated, a cot and a chair and a window the size of my arm looking out into dead black space. Queen Tesra sat in the chair. She was tall, even-seated, dark amber skin, deep-set black eyes, hair gone silver-streaked where it hadn't been cut, shaved close at the temples. She looked at the window or past it. She did not look at me. I ran the checklist. Pulse, respiration, temperature. Logged them. I had the tablet in my hand, and I was about to leave, and then I stood there for a moment longer than I needed to. I said, "What would you like for breakfast tomorrow?" No answer. She did not move. I said I would check the galley inventory and leave options on her tray. Then I left. The next morning I logged 3 options on a strip of paper and laid it next to the tray. Grain broth, seed flatbread, a cold fruit compress from the treaty galley. I ran the checklist. I did not ask again. I came back the following day and all 3 options were untouched. The strip of paper was still there. I took the tray, logged the refusal under nutritional compliance, and left another strip with the next day's options. 2 of the other aides told me gently that I was wasting paper. Sorel Vaz told me less gently that the compliance checklist did not include a breakfast consultation. He said it the way you say things you believe are kind. She is not going to answer you. I nodded and filed the day's log. I kept asking. I varied the question. Sometimes it was breakfast. Sometimes it was whether the window temperature was right, whether she wanted the light dimmed. I asked once whether she wanted music and left the sound panel set to low static, the closest thing to neutral the station offered. I did not push. I did not hover. I asked. I noted no response in the log and I left. I came back the next morning. On the 9th day I brought a cup of something warm from the treaty galley, not from the compliance tray, just something I had picked up for myself and bought a second of. I set it on the sill beside her chair, not on the tray. I ran the checklist. I said, "The galley had this in today. I didn't know if you'd want it." I left. The cup was moved the following morning. Not to the tray and not to the floor, to the small ledge beside her cot within reach. I did not write that in the compliance log. I wrote it in my personal notes. On the 14th day, a new transfer order appeared in the annex file queue. Sorel Vaz had co-signed it. Senior advisor Verkan, the Khan sovereignty's ranking representative on Korath, would countersign on arrival in 4 days. The order cited ongoing non-responsiveness, protocol surplus status, resource allocation. It was, in the terms of treaty administration, entirely correct. I read it twice. I am not a lawyer and I am not a doctor of standing in any sovereignty. What I am is a civilian aide with a medical hold provision in my secondment contract, a clause that allows me to flag a transfer for clinical review if I believe it would cause measurable harm to a patient in active assessment. I had never used it. I filed it that afternoon. The response from Vaz was 3 sentences. The hold was procedurally valid. It would delay counter-signature pending review. He noted that the basis for active assessment was not established in the compliance record. So I wrote a supplementary note, 7 lines. I described the cup on the ledge. I described the paper strip picked up and held on the 12th day, set down again, not thrown away. I described the way she had turned her head, not toward me but away from the window on the morning I had asked about the music. I wrote, the compliance record shows a non-responsive patient. My observation record shows a patient who is listening. I filed it. 4 days later, I was in the corridor outside the annex when Verk An came down the level 4 passage with 2 court staff at his back. He was a tall Khan elder, formal armor with a sovereignty seal at the collar, the transfer order in a document sleeve under his arm. He looked at me the way officials look at aides, not unkindly, just briefly, and reached for the annex door panel. I said, she may be speaking this morning. He stopped. He looked at me again, longer this time. I said I had asked the question about 40 minutes ago and I had heard movement inside, and I thought it would be better if he heard whatever came next rather than interrupting it. I said this quietly, without performance. I had no authority to stop him. I just said what I believed. He stood. His 2 staff looked at each other. He put one hand on the panel and did not open it. Through the door, the annex panels are not fully soundproof, which I had learned over 3 weeks. I heard her voice. It was low and rough with disuse, the way a thing sounds when it has been stored in a dry place for too long. She was answering the question I had asked 40 minutes ago, not the grain broth. She did not want the grain broth again. She said the name of something from the southern markets of the 3rd moon of the Khan Corps, a name I did not know and could not spell, said it carefully like she was reading it off the inside of a memory. And then she said she had not had it in 4 years, and she thought the treaty galley might not carry it, but she thought she could describe it if someone wanted to try. Verk An's pen had come out when she started speaking. He did not use it. He stood in the corridor for the full minute it took her to finish. Then he looked at the document sleeve. He put it under his arm again and looked at me. I told him I did not know if the galley carried what she was describing. I said I would find out. He nodded very slightly. He said he would hold the counter-signature for review. He said it the way people say things they are still catching up to. His 2 staff were quiet. He turned and walked back down the passage. I stood in the corridor for another moment. Then I went to find a galley supervisor and ask about 3rd moon imports. That is all I did. That is the whole of it. I asked a question for 3 weeks and stood in the corridor and waited. I don't tell this story because it was difficult. I tell it because it wasn't, because it was the smallest possible thing, a question and a cup of something warm and a supplementary note, and because 3 years had passed on that station without anyone doing even that much. She had not stopped speaking. She had stopped being asked.